Welcome everybody to this first Reflecting on Our Journey with a Methodist Way of Life. It's great to welcome all of you who are watching this recording and to welcome Mark and Siobhan who are going to join in a conversation with me. They'll introduce themselves in a few moments so you get to know them. My name is David Goodall and I'm the District Mission Enabler in the Yorkshire West Methodist District. This is the first in a series of reflecting on our journey with a Methodist way of life. A Methodist way of life is 12 commitments which we are invited as disciples in the Methodist tradition to live out and to commit to as followers of Jesus. A Methodist way of life is often depicted as a train map with the 12 commitments as 12 stations. And we think about our journey with God in three ways. In choosing to get on the train and to go on a journey with God of love and discovery and following Jesus. Secondly, of visiting those 12 stations, not all at once, not every day, but in a rhythm through our lives. And then thirdly, reflecting on that journey, maybe on our own, but hopefully often with others. And this series is to encourage us as disciples in the district and beyond to think how we can do a little bit more of that reflecting on our journey. In each of our videos, Mark and I will welcome guests to this space where we will chat through a couple of the Methodist Way of Life stations and hear how they're living those commitments out in their lives, how Mark and I are living those out, and maybe where some of the challenges are along the way. As well as putting this video out on Facebook and YouTube and in other social media channels. There'll be an opportunity once a month to gather for a Zoom conversation where we'll watch the video, but where also we'll be able to share together in some of that reflecting. So without any further introduction, let's have a conversation together. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Reverend Mark. I am a Methodist minister currently residing in West Yorkshire, but I am originally from East Yorkshire in the rural parts of East Yorkshire, halfway between Hull and Hornsey originally, but currently on the outskirts of Leeds. And yeah, I'm a Methodist minister. I'm also a digital church enabler. And there's also something that you would like to us encourage to share a bit about us today about our hopes that we have for 2025, and so that for me is just a selfish one about exploring and playing more board games. David, we've heard from you already, but I'm going to come back to you. First of all, though, to Siobhan, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Siobhan Womack, currently living in Giggleswick. I work as a mission enabler for Settle and Hellifield churches. Yes, we've lived here for about 3 years now, and previously I was in South Africa, so I'm actually South African, so that's where my accent's from. So yes, as for my hopes for 2025, it's quite an exciting year for us. We're actually expecting a child, so
congratulations.
Enjoy the next few months of work and do as much as I can there, and then yes, have a child.
Fantastic.
That's great.
And over to you, David.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Siobhan. So I live in North Leeds. As I said earlier, I serve as the District Mission Enabler for the Yorkshire West Methodist District. So I cover the whole of the district from where Siobhan is up in Settle in the north down to Penistone in the south and across all the different towns of Bradford and Wakefield and Leeds, cities of Leeds and Bradford, right out to Todmorden on the Lancashire border. And it's a joy for me to help local churches think about how they engage with their communities and how they grow in their discipleship. I did ask you to think about a hope for 2025, and then I forgot to think about one myself. But I think for me, I like to get outdoors, but sometimes that doesn't happen as much as I'd like. So we've got loads of canals and rivers and countryside to explore in Yorkshire, and I love to do that. So I hope to do that a little bit more. And I really like swimming, but often my swimming falls out of my diary. So our hope is that my swimming has a greater frequency is probably the hope through 2025. But I do like board games, Mark. You know that. So if you're home to play more board games, then I'm always willing to play a board game. We've got some new ones for Christmas, so we can find some time. So let's jump in. Today we're going to think about two of the Methodist Way of Life stations, which come with two commitments. So we're going to think firstly about the pray station, and then we're going to think later about the serve station. And the prayer station, the commitment at the prayer station is that we will pray daily. It's interesting, it's the only one of the Methodist Way of Life stations that has a frequency to it, which I think says something about our importance of prayer. And as we reflect on that, if you've got one of the Methodist Way of Life pocket guides, or you can see it on the Methodist Church website, each of the stations has a couple of questions to help us reflect. But I thought before we came to those questions, I'd ask each of us, if we were to describe prayer in a sentence, what would we say prayer is? If we're going to think about praying daily, I think it's good to just think about what prayer is. So Siobhan, if you could describe prayer in a sentence, what would you say?
Prayer in a sentence. As a prayer is communication with God, a chance to experience his presence, and just a chance to grow our relationship with God, because it is a relationship,
Thank you. Mark, a sentence, do you have one?
I was going to copy Siobhan with communication, but I think for me it is an outpouring from the soul, followed by an intentional listening, and so there's that two-way kind of connectivity. And I was about to give a caveat to that. It sounds very formal and very kind of like holier than thou, but I think it can be that kind of usual splurge brain process, and just kind of just where I am at, just kind of going there to God, and then also taking that moment to listen, if that is one sentence.
I'm not going to argue about whether the sentence or not. Thank you. I think for me, there's something for me that prayer is about becoming attuned to God. So I think very much believe that God is with us and present in all places at all times. But we have an opportunity to decide whether we want to become attentive to that. So I think prayer for me is becoming attentive to God and God's presence with us, and then engaging in whatever communication is helpful to us in that as well. So with that bit of an introduction from each of us as prayer, the questions that the Methodist Way of Life asks us about prayer is, how do you pray? And has prayer been easy or hard recently? And I was thinking that for me, how do I pray? People sort of expect you to have a stock answer for that you've worked out how you do it and what you do. And I think for me, actually, I pray in different ways at different moments. And I think when I was I grew up in the church, but I would say when my faith came alive at university, there was this sort of easy way that as students you could find this pattern of prayer, and you could get up in the morning and you could read your Bible. And actually, I look back on university days and think, wow, I had so much time. And now in full-time ministry, the family, it simply isn't like that. So I think for me, I pray in different ways at different times. But I think one of the things for me is I need scripture as part of my prayer. So actually, yes, I can become attentive to God and I can tune in to God, but I believe powerfully in how God speaks through scripture. So in some of my praying, I need that opportunity to hear scripture and to think about what that's saying to the moment and to the current situation. And sometimes I do that using the Lectio 365 app. Sometimes I do that by sitting down and holding a real Bible in my hand and printed paper. But at other times, my prayer is much more just a moment of looking at the beauty of creation, or being silent, or a song. So different ways at different times for me. Mark.
Shall I go?
Yeah,
So
go on.
basically, I think for me, likewise, I recognise the busyness and bustle of life, and therefore kind of have to often shoehorn it into places, which isn't always the healthiest thing. However, what I do try to do is factor in, for example, if I need to go and visit somebody in the hospital, first of all, I am a Yorkshireman, so therefore I go and park somewhere where I don't have to pay. So I will pay, also I will park about kind of maybe a 10-15 minute walk away from the hospital, and but then to take that time to pray, to take that time to reflect and just to consolidate my thoughts a little bit, but then that will lead on to kind of prayer and just being prayerful, especially heading to a hospital, and I'll just kind of be praying for the person I'm visiting, the wards and the nurses and things like that, and so that's very much an outward thing. But then there would be times when just taking the opportunity to go for a walk again, and walking for me and prayer is very comes hand in hand, and that has always been a thing for me. When I used to go for a long walk away from my parents during my teenage years, through to I lived out in the middle of nowhere, so it was kind of like country walking, but without the muddy boots. So yeah, it's just kind of came quite naturally to me with the kind of conversational walking and praying. But that being said, I'm a Methodist minister. I don't do that in the pulpit. I don't do that in the lectern. It may look weird. But I do kind of, I very rarely use scripted prayers. It would often be, just kind of ad-libbed, just straight from the heart sort of stuff. So that's kind of my approach to praying.
Thanks, Mark. I was really struck there by your comment about walking and prayer, because I think often when we talk about it being difficult to find time to do anything, but particularly pray, but I also think exercise. One of the Methodist way of life stations is around caring for ourselves, and actually we all know that exercise. I just said finding more time to swim is a hope for 2025. But actually to take a walk, I know a number of people who will take a walk to do a meeting on or take a phone call, that actually we can combine some of these things if we're open. And actually what you're showing us there, I'm really struck by the way that we can combine, walking and caring for our bodies with prayer as well.
So you're not going to kick us off the train then for having a different ticket?
No, I'm not the Methodist way of life ticket inspector.
Jolly good. You've heard it here first, folks.
Siobhan, did anything in what we've said strike you, or how would you answer that question of how do you pray?
So I think my prayer life has two parts to it. The first one is I really try that pray without ceasing. So just in small moments, if something good happens, just like God, thank you, or something bad happens, but so just that constant awareness of God's presence in like the day-to-day life. I'm not always very good at it. Some days I don't do it. But then also that more focused time, I'm very much more tactile. My concentration is terrible. So if I'm not doing something to focus my mind, then I pray for about 5 seconds and my mind is somewhere else already. So I very much I write out prayers, or I'll sit and color in sometimes, or I need to be actually reading the Bible. So basically something physical to be focused, or else I don't have very good prayers.
Thank you. It's really interesting how we all pray differently, and I think I'm just sat here wondering whether that says something into the second question about has prayer been hard or easy, and I wonder whether I'd be interested in your reflections on actually, is prayer harder when we're trying to conform to how other people think we should pray, and prayer is easier when actually we find the way that suits the way that God has created us and the way that we've been made?
I think for me, prayer is harder when life gets busier, when life gets more stressed, when life gets more complicated, and therefore it needs to be more intentionally shoehorned in. So on a good day, on a good diary day and a good day when I'm feeling good and great and the sun's shining, it's very easy to just kind of go, oh, I'm going to pray now. But when the diary is full and when stress levels are higher, when, I feel a bit panicked in myself, that's when it's harder to put the prayer in. But I think I would like to think that I do try and put it in, but it just takes a lot more effort. I guess it's like I do running, and it's when it's wet or rainy or cold outside, it just takes a heck of a lot more energy to get out that and just go, oh, okay, I know it's going to be good when I'm doing it. Same with prayer. It's just like going, oh, you know what? I need to push through this. I need to carve out time to do this. Because I think it always feels better once you've done it. Just again, that kind of comparison with going out for a run or insert exercise there.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's those days where it's easy and you feel so good after a prayer session and your day is more peaceful and everything's great. And then when you need that peace, it's so much harder to just sit down and actually do the prayer. But when you do it, it really does make a difference.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think I was struck as just listening to you that I'm not sure I find prayer hard or easy. There are times where the content of what I need to pray about can be hard, or finding time to pray can be hard. But I don't think I find, to go back to my beginning sentence, I don't find sitting in God's presence or becoming attentive to God hard. I sometimes find what I need to engage with God about hard, or I find making space hard. But I think the actual act of prayer, I think for me, is actually this great gift of God, that the God who comes amongst us, we've just celebrated the birth of Jesus, God is with us, that actually that is really easy to find God, but actually it's some of the things around it that are more difficult. I'm going to move us on, because we are, this is our first recording and we want to stick to about half an hour, folks who are listening, but we are aware that we've done some more introductions today. So I want to just move us on from the prayer station and on to the serve station.
So yes, we trundle up to the serve station. The doors open, and the commitment here is that we help people in our own communities and beyond. And I guess when we kind of think about serving others and these communities, I guess it's a really helpful question to ask, and to just, because we might take it for granted, is just to ponder about what communities are we a part of. And so I guess that question is for all of us. I think for me, and just to give fellow people a moment to think about it, for me, I think I'm part of a church community, and each of the churches that I serve, there's at least one community, if not more, I would say, that are connected to it. And whether that's the church community, the neighbouring community, and the various communities that use the church and recognise it. There's also family, community, as well as other places where I socialise, where I am, including online as well. And so there's those sort of communities that I am part of. I would say I'm part of a running community, but we don't really chat to one another, as in to say I'm not part of a group as such, but I will see people and pass by. And even just this week, it turns out that my children's guitar tutor saw me running, and he's like, "Were you in that Thought Up?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that was it. So it's not really that much of a community, but even just in an isolated activity, it's just it struck me. I was there thinking, oh, actually, just wearing a t-shirt was like, it was an opportunity, and that they noticed me. So an obscure one, but that is another community that I'm part of.
Siobhan, how about you? Where are the communities you're part of?
So similar to Mark, church and the things that go around church, so Bible studies and all of that. As a mum, so all of the groups that I take my young 2-year-old to, so we take her swimming, so part of that community, and she does all these little bits and pieces. we live on a school. My husband's a chaplain at a school, so we live on site. So we're part of that school community as well. And then also my job sort of lends to some other communities. So we run a youth group and we have a moms and tots group, and so all of those as well. So yeah, quite a broad range.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the church thing for me is interesting because for most of my life I've been part of one church or as a minister a few churches. It's interesting for me in this appointment because I'm not the minister of a local church. I serve the whole district. So my family are part of a church community in North Leeds, and I'm sort of connected there. But I go out and preach all over the place, which I really enjoy. But I also miss that sort of connection with one or two church communities, and it's not bad or good. It just is for this place where God's called me at the moment. I think I feel really part of the school community, the school that my son goes to. I felt very called by God to be a school governor. It wasn't a call I expected, but it came quite clearly. But there's been a real richness to that, and I might come back to that when we think about the questions at the moment. And I'm part of the Scout community, and I think that's always been really special for me. I've been part of the Scouts throughout my life since I was 6. I'm now a volunteer again as my son's joined Cubs. So I'm part of that community, but I think the Scout community for me is worldwide. I've done scouting in different countries. I've done scouting in different parts of the UK. Just last week, I had to go to London for work, and I managed to catch up with a friend who I know through scouting. And that's a real sense for me of a community that has really deep values, actually, and shared values. And I think that's what I really appreciate in a community, is when there's a sense of a commitment around shared values or faith, and that's really important for me.
Well, thank you. I guess then we've identified the potential communities. I completely forgot about the school community, by the way. We are 2 doors down from my children's school, and what's interesting is that it's a Catholic school, and we're both ministers, and so I'm always aware of if I'm wearing my dog collar or not, because I'm like, I feel as if I'm on other people's terrain. Yeah, we've identified communities. I guess the second kind of part of this commitment is the challenge is going to be where have we helped recently, or it may be easier or maybe harder to ask the question of, and who has also helped us. So who have we helped recently and who has helped us? I think I'm going to again give you a moment to think. So I'm going to say that for me recently, it's been a troubling time of the last month with one of my churches in particular, where we've had a couple of young adult funerals or deaths, and then kind of subsequent funerals, and it's just been really hard going. But even though it's harrowing, even though it's hard, to just be in that place and leading a family through kind of support and through just walking with, and there's also in one of my other churches there's been recently a funeral as well, a death, and so again it's preparing for funerals, and it's such a privilege, but it's such hard kind of work walking through with the family, but it is a privilege and it is part of my role, yes, but it always really grounds me, and I just try to be best version of myself, trying to help those people in that place. I don't always get the right words, I don't always get it right, but it just feels such a sense of God has put me in the right place at the right time to walk sensitively and carefully and pastorally with these people, and it's such a privilege. I get that, and that's not to blow my own trumpet. I think it doesn't even register. It's just really hard, but really that you're in the right place, you're in the right groove. So that for me is a heavy one, but that is one that really resonates at the moment, and continuing to think and pray for those families at this time. David or Siobhan?
I want to say thank you for sharing that, Mark, and that comment there at the end that it's a heavy one, but actually for me, that's why the reflecting on our faith is so important, because being able to reflect, whether it's here, whether hopefully what we're modelling here is what people can do around a coffee shop or a church coffee table, is actually to be able to say that's really precious. And each of us will have different places, I hope, that we can reflect in terms of those of us in full-time ministry. But actually, I want to say thank you for sharing the hard as well as the easy. I think for me, I think some of the ways I've been helping communities recently is to be able to listen to people, and I think just a few conversations around the school gate with parents, with staff, with colleagues sometimes as well in some of my work things, there's something really precious in. We all talk, when we talked about prayer, we talked about busyness. And actually, I think the other thing that can go in a busy life is that being attentive to each other as well as being attentive to God. And it's easy to say, oh, here's this stuff, or here's that, and I need to go, or, oh, nice to see you at the school gate. Whereas actually being able to give people time to be heard is really precious. And I think that's some of the ways I've been helping communities. And I think that's been reciprocated with me as well. I have various friends who I meet with. I've seen my supervisor recently, and actually others have offered that back to me. And that's been precious too. So I think actually for me, the helping of communities has been about being a listener and helping people to be heard. But I felt that reciprocated back to me.
I think for me as well, it's quite similar to David. So certainly one of the things I love most about my role is, running Moms and Tots groups and youth groups, is you get to sort of walk alongside people in different parts of their lives, and you're an hour with them just having a cup of tea and chatting, and it very much gives them an opportunity to talk about things that might be hard or struggling with. So it's just that helping them through, sometimes not even hard things in their life, but just being that listening ear.
Thank you. The other question then is, as a part of that, is then who has helped us, and whether that's just as easy or just as hard to answer. I'll leave that up to you. I think for me, I felt really helped by a close friend who has just been a listening ear, and bizarrely it's through Messenger rather than through actually being physically present, just being able to chat and to reflect together and to share life's ups and downs together. So that for me was really helped, and really kind of someone's just taking the time out, and somebody who is already kind of a close friend to me as well already, but they've just been really there to support, and that's been really appreciated. Again, sorry, another heavy one, but just throw that one in there. What about yourselves? Who has helped us? Are we able to answer that easily, hard, or something else?
A really practical one for me was we're doing a project around the Yorkshire West Methodist district called Susanna's Table in Lent. Give that a little plug. And the resource books were delivered to my house from the printer, and I'd very particularly asked for them to be delivered. They were ordered before Christmas, they needed to be here for the new year, and I'd carefully selected the date on which they should arrive, and they didn't come. They came early in a wet day, and I was deeply grateful to our neighbours who went round and picked up some quite heavy boxes and struggled with them back to their house so that the resources didn't get sodden in the rain. So that was a really practical neighbour who helped me and all of the districts, because we now have the resources to share.
Yes, for myself, we have this a couple who live quite nearby us and become quite close friends with them, and they are very deeply spiritual people, very on fire for God, and just they a constant encouragement in my own spiritual journey. They have many more years experience than I do in all of this, and sometimes it's so great just have a sounding board or just a piece of scripture, or they're really just a spiritual help in my own journey, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I want to thank you both for those comments and that conversation and the way we've seen things in each other as well. I think for me, when we reflect, we reflect because actually sometimes that helps us to say, oh yeah, I might do that differently, or I can take that away from the reflecting. And so that doesn't always need to be I'm going to do this, because sometimes actually life's busy enough without taking on something else. But I wonder whether there's just one thing that you have taken away from the conversation today, or something you'll take away into your walk and your journey with God.
I guess it's to continue to carve out time for God, even on the hard days, even with the heavy things. It's still good to give time over, and even though you feel, it's been hard work, it's good to do that. And also, I guess it's to also accept when you need help from others. I think that can be really hard sometimes. So to accept when life is hard, to let God in, but also let other people in too.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I think for me it's about what really stood out was how we're talking about we need to be praying what we're doing. So sometimes life is busy and it's really hard to find the time to sit down and have that like full structured prayer time. But it is just a matter of praying in whatever activity you're doing at that moment, whether it's walking the dog or just being more conscious of time I can use better.
Thank you. I was really struck by that conversation about the multiple communities that we're all part of. And it was interesting, Mark, you saying after I talked about school, I didn't think about the school community, and I'm sure there were communities I didn't think about, and I think I just want to ponder that a bit more. So again, it's not something to do, but I just want to, what is it? Just want to ponder a bit more about multiple communities and what that means for us as we're part of different communities. So I'm taking away something to think about in a different way.
Yeah. I think the other element of that, isn't it, is that we sometimes don't actually know the impact that we do have. And whilst some people we might think that we're just on the periphery, that we're not just, you don't know actually what impact we have on their lives or how we are considered to them. And yeah, I think that is something that resonates, of just that thinking about actually, whilst we may consider certain frameworks of communities, actually we may be part of something bigger, something broader. Even just what t-shirts we wear or what kind of actions we do broadly, we might be considered bigger and broader than what we put ourselves into. Is there anything else left to be said?
I think that I don't think so. It's been a great conversation, and a real rich first of these episodes for me. So I think I'm done.
Well, yeah, fantastic. And Siobhan, anything else left to be said?
No, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed that. It was really good.
Well, bless you. Well, thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, David. Thank you for taking time out in your day to share, and to the things that you have shared as well. Folks, if you are watching this, listening to this on Facebook, YouTube, or on the podcast, then I hope this has been a helpful time. I just invite you to think about, maybe is there somewhere that this could be shared with, whether on social platforms or with physical, practical people. So just give it a bit of a thought, whether it's with one of your communities or one of your friend groups or otherwise. There's also, there should be in the blurb somewhere, a reminder about our Zoom conversations that will be happening alongside the release of these videos and podcasts. And next month, our stations are going to be Care and Tell. Anything left to be said, David, or is that everything concluded?
That's fine. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you folks for tuning in, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Bye-bye.